Assalamualaikum students, this is the second lesson of the chapter number 10, the classical age of the Guptas. In the previous lesson, I have told you about the developments of the Guptas time. In today's lesson, we will start from the third development, which was in the development in the field of the science and mathematics. So let's get started. Under the Guptas, scientists and mathematicians made many advances, including the invention of the idea and symbol of zero and the decimal system. So you can also say that the idea and symbol of zero and the decimal system, all these two main inventions in the mathematics was made in the Gupta's time. In Gupta times, mathematicians used a dot or circle to mean zero. Later they stopped using the dot. The Hindi word for zero was shunya, meaning empty. The word was later translated by Arab mathematicians as sifr. From this word came the English word zero. So you can also say that this is the history of the zero and how the zero was invented in Gupta's time. The zero invention of the zero led to the invention of the decimal system, and in the decimal system pi was correctly calculated to four decimal places. You know the what is the value of pi is equal to 3.1416. So it is correctly calculated to the four decimal places in the Gupta's time. Pi is the 16th letter of the Greek alphabet. Today, mathematicians use pi as the symbol for the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. The value of pi had been worked out by the Greek mathematician Archimedes. Scientists also worked with sophisticated mathematical tools such as negative numbers, quadratic equations, and the square root of 2. It is thought that Indian astronomers used both Persian and Greek knowledge to develop their ideas about astronomy. One of the greatest mathematicians and astronomers of the time of the Guptas was Aryabhata, who lived from AD 476 to about AD 550. He was born in Pataliputra, and as a mathematician he could solve quadratic equations. In AD 499 he discovered that the earth was a sphere which travelled round the sun once a year. He also correctly explained eclipses of the sun and the moon. Gupta astronomers also knew that the earth rotated on its axis. Students, during the classical age, a great quantity of art and architecture was produced across a large area of the northern subcontinent. During Gupta times, important developments and very high levels of achievements were made in the fields of Buddhist and Hindu sculpture and architecture. Many Hindu and Buddhist statues were made. Sculptors worked mainly in stone but also produced fine bronze and copper statues. And also developments were made in the field of painting. The Buddhist paintings at the famous Ajanta caves are some of the earliest paintings discovered in India. As you remember, in the last chapter of the Gandhara, you learnt about the Gandhara school of art, which began in the 1st century AD. The classical Gupta style grew out of the Gandhara school of the art. And do you also remember that some Gandhara styles were copied from Greek and Roman styles? Do you? Yes. In the time of Gupta Golden Age, these foreign influences disappeared or changed so much that they could no longer be easily recognized. In the Gupta times, the human figure became very important and sculptors were interested in making figures look very natural. Now India had a style of art which was truly Indian. Art historians comment that the sculpture of Gupta times looks calm and peaceful and features human figures which look both beautiful and dignified. Buddhist sculptors in Gupta times gave their statues some special features. A very large, round, highly decorated halo behind the head, cloths that look transparent and cling to the figures. Art history experts think that some of the very best Gupta statues are some Buddhist ones found at the place Sarnath. These statues are dated from the 5th century AD and are carved from stone, red sandstone. Art historians think these Sarnath statues are very important. One says that they are probably the greatest single achievement of the Indian sculptor and have an almost unique perfection. Another art historian points out their significant and lasting effect on all Buddhist and Hindu art which came after them, both in India and in other countries. A lot of Hindu Gupta sculpture showed the god Vishnu. He was often carved as a man, but also carved as a boar, or a boar with a man's head, or a creature that was like both a man and a lion. Other Hindu statues might be of Indra, Indra was the god of war. There were also statues of three goddesses and Ganga, the goddess of river Ganges. Students, during Gupta times, both Buddhists and Hindus made stone or brick temples in which they could practice their religion. Some of these temples were rock cut, means cut out of a rock face or a cliff near the village of Ajanta in Maharashtra state, central India. Buddhist monks cut 29 caves and temples into the steep sides of a U-shaped river valley beginning in the 3rd or 2nd century BC. The cave, Ajanta cave, contain Buddhist statues and carvings, but also on the walls and ceilings are some of the earliest paintings in India. The paintings are for the paintings in the Ajanta caves are frescoes. Frescoes is a special type of painting that is done on wet plaster. The work of the sculptors and artists shows great skill and most are based on stories of events in the life of the Buddha. But there are also colorful and lively court scenes and animals including elephants, bulls, horses, birds and monkeys in the paintings. Now I will tell you some reasons why the Gupta declined. Students, yet even while Gupta sculptors perfected the halos of their statues and Gupta astronomers gazed at the stars and calculated the next eclipse, enemies were plotting. The golden age was soon to be lived by invaders that came from the west side. It was the time of 443 until 451. People that called the White Huns, they are also known as the Hephthalites or Aphthalites. They crossed the Hindu Kush mountains and they were led by their chief Leleh. He conquered the Kabul Valley and then he conquered Gandhara and then he captured Taxila and ruined out the city. Buddhist monks were persecuted and their monasteries and temples destroyed. White Huns moved from the west to the east towards the city of Pataliputra. Gupta king Skanda Gupta, the last Gupta king, fifth Gupta king, Skanda Gupta fought hard to stop them. but the White Huns were too strong for his army. They destroyed everything in their path and captured and ruled the historic city of Pataliputra. Skanda Gupta died in AD 467, and soon the White Huns broke up the Gupta Empire and became the strongest power in the Central Asia. So, from this book and lessons, you all came to know that how power from the Pataliputra moved towards the Gandhara, and from the Gandhara moves towards to the Guptas, and now from the Guptas power moved to the White Huns. Students, now I'll tell you about the power of the White Huns. For a time, the Guptas were able to keep power in some areas, but Laile, who was the chief of the White Huns, soon followed by a second White Hun king, Toramana. In around AD 500, Toramana again attacked northern India. The Guptas managed to drive the Huns out of the Ganges Valley and Malwa, but by AD 510, Sindh and Malwa were part of the Hun Empire again. Toramana's son, Toramana's son Mihirakula made Sialkot his capital and conquered Kashmir and the Ganges Valley. By AD 550, Gupta power was at end and the lands were broken up once more into the independent kingdoms. The White Huns now ruled much of the regions of modern Pakistan and Kashmir. More Huns and some other tribes entered the subcontinent along with some other tribes including the Gujars. In AD 600, Sindh was conquered by the Gujarats. Although most of these people then moved on to Gujarat and Rajasthan in India. Do you know, students, that modern historians believe that the origin of many of the people of the present day Pakistan can be traced back to the tribes people of the Scythians, the White Huns, and the Gujarats. And many Afghan Pathan tribes and most of the Rajput and Jat clans of the Punjab and Sindh are thought to be descended from the White Huns. So, this was all from the history syllabus. Our syllabus is completed now, and we will move towards some the revision topics, inshallah. Till then, you have to write down the answers of some of the questions that you can see on the slides on the screen. So you will write down the answers of these questions in your notebook, and I hope that all these questions are well explained and you have the better understanding when you will read out your books. So don't forget to read out thoroughly your book and clear up your concept, and if you feel any ambiguity, I'm here to answer any query from your side. So don't hesitate to contact me on my WhatsApp number. I'll be waiting for your response and your work on my WhatsApp number.